Hello and welcome to Divine Timing Coaching, the Practical Esoteric. This is VerDarLuz, and I'm excited to share with you today all about the upcoming lunar eclipse in Scorpio, reflecting on our big solar eclipse in the last degree of Aries, and talking about some Mercury retrograde and really all the big aspects of this eclipse coming in, as well as how this is going to affect all 12 signs. So get your cup of tea, coffee, whatever you got there. And let's dive into this really emotionally cathartic full moon coming in. So here's the chart, May 5th, 2023 at 1:35 p.m. This is East Coast time, and you'll see the sun here and the moon. There's that opposition. This is the full moon. And when we look at this chart, so put that wherever you are in the world, right? And we have a lot to talk about here. So the first thing is, let's back up and let's look at last week. Let's look at what happened with the solar eclipse in Scorpio. Sorry, solar eclipse in Aries, 29 degrees, squaring Pluto. So a major new energy for a lot of us, a lot of transformation moving in the sky, very cathartic energies, which continue into the eclipse that's coming with Scorpio. So everything is kind of raised like tenfold, right? When the eclipse is touching Pluto. And it usually brings up a lot of the unconscious, a lot of the shadow material, maybe some things that we don't want to face, but it can also be very empowering and provocative for us, like, reveal something that maybe we haven't addressed, right? And been willing to look at. It could be certain desires, it could be definitely things about wealth and resource management. Now that comes up really strong anytime Taurus and Scorpio are activated, or when Pluto's activated. And this is going to be a really strong theme for us throughout this whole year. And that eclipse really brought us to look at our own resources, but also how we are connected to larger structures of resource. And that includes the banking industry. And yes, are we safe putting our money there, keeping our money there? There really does seem to be, with the Pluto eclipse that's just happened, this upcoming Scorpio eclipse, right? We think about shared resources, joint resources. So we're all looking at, like, how we share houses with people, homes, if there's conflicts in the home space. If I have to rent from somebody, am I paying too much? Is it worth what I'm paying? Obviously, if I live with a partner, are we equal and balanced in how we're sharing the wealth and the expenses for the home, right? This is very Scorpionic territory. It's very Pluto territory. Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. It has affinity with Scorpio. Of course, Mars is the traditional ruler, and we'll talk about Mars in this chart because it's really significant what Mars is doing in the eclipses. But just to emphasize that resources, personal, and then how I share them, are really up with both of these eclipses. And you might know in the world stage that there's a lot going on that these eclipses are tuning us into, including, a rather, it seems like, rapid de-dollarization around the world. Like, countries are really attempting to move away from the dollar. And of course, this is not going to be overnight, but it's a movement. And you have the BRICS organization, which is, I think, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These nations that are, they've been really tied in with the dollar. Now they're trying to pull out and create their own currency. Some are saying it's going to be backed by the CBDC. And this is something that we all, again, should be paying a lot of attention to. This is a central bank digital currency. We know with Pluto involved at the first degree of Aquarius, right? All year, right around the first degree. And with Taurus involved with this Mercury retrograde, Taurus, the sign of finances and money and resources. Then you have a Scorpio eclipse, again, joint resources. We're talking about, how we are part of, a national economy, and then how that economy affects the entire world. And so there's a big trickle down effect, and we're all going to be, having to make some decisions. And so one of the things about our finances right now that we may be reconsidering with Mercury retrograde, which is, between these two eclipses, it's just like right in the same window. It started Friday the 21st, is diversification of our resources, and so we're thinking about stores of wealth, some of us, and there's a potential coming, and we'll talk about this a lot more with the May astrology, but with Jupiter going into Taurus and squaring Pluto right around May 16th, 17th, my birthday, that we can come into some wealth. Jupiter and Taurus can bring wealth, but it might not look like we might think. And this is one of the reconsiderations right now that a lot of us are going through is, what is wealth? What are real resources to me? If I have a house, right, that's a real asset, right? And then we look at, well, should I have money in Bitcoin? And Pluto is on Bitcoin's, Mercury right now. It's a very significant moment. Is Bitcoin pulling away from the stock market and, the traditional kind of dollar and global economy? So should I be storing some money in Bitcoin? Should I be storing some money in gold, right? People are storing a lot in gold and silver. These are important questions to be asking, storing wealth, assets, diversification. Is it the stocks? Is it dividend? Do I trust that? Local banking, right? So these are some questions that we're asking about on a larger scale. And then as we move into this, lunar eclipse, this is going to be quite emotional for a lot of us. A lunar eclipse is always very emotional. It's the full moon. It's the biggest super full moon of the year in terms of how it feels, and especially if it touches a significant part of your chart. So if you look at the degrees, 14 is the sensitive degree. And do you have planets, between 7 and say 21 of fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius? Those planets are getting really rocked by this eclipse. And they have been rocked for the last year and a half, because we've had these eclipses that have, been in Scorpio and Taurus. This is the last one. So that's probably a good thing for a lot of us in terms of, how much we've had to shed and release and let go of. We've had to face, confront, hopefully conquer resistances. I mean, this is, Scorpio eclipses are not comfortable eclipses. There's always something really intense, often dramatic, that can come up. So one of the questions to ask is, dramas and traumas that I need to really work through, and call in support around. Therapy could be really strong around this eclipse. And if you're not doing it or working with a coach or a counselor, I especially recommend doing work with an astrologer or a human design consultant, because we can see deeper into these patterns. In a single session, we can go so deep. And that's why I like to do ongoing coaching with clients. And if you're interested, please contact me below. The link is below. But it's so helpful to have charts as the basis for ongoing work, because we can work through cycles that you're going through. We can work through core patterns. We can work through evolutionary themes. And so when you look at a Scorpio eclipse, this is what we feel about and what we think about. We think about, like, why does this pattern come up again and again and again? It could be a pattern in relationship. It could be a pattern in how I live, where I live, family issues, right? Ancestral issues. It's pretty deep, right? And so purging, detoxifying, cleansing, usually there's a crisis that requires us to shift in a bigger way around a Scorpio eclipse. Now, psychological shifts, this would be a great time to study Carl Jung, transpersonal psychology, do breath work, regression therapy. I do a practice called deep memory process regression therapy, in addition to some different breathwork modalities. This could be really up for us as well, because Uranus is involved with this eclipse. And Uranus always brings some kind of, high volatile, high electric type of energy into us. So we might as well embrace that and say, hey, I'm going to do this intense breathwork journey, right? Or I'm going to try to have a spiritual or awakening epiphany, Uranus, that can shift my whole paradigm of reality potentially. An eclipse with Uranus, you could see that the sun is approaching Uranus to this eclipse. So we really got like a good 10 days after this eclipse with its strong Uranian flavor because the sun is so close to Uranus. And this also harkens to Mercury going retrograde, and sort of the week between eclipses where Mercury's pretty close to Uranus as well. He's not super tight on this eclipse, but the sun is there. So what we're being asked from with Uranus during this whole sort of window that we're in around the eclipses and the days and weeks after is to have some kind of, breakthroughs and allow ourselves to change. I mean, Scorpio is, butterfly who was a caterpillar and has no concept of what the caterpillar was, and the caterpillar has no concept of what the butterfly was, right? So there's a willingness for transformation, and we don't want to throw that word around lightly. It really is potentially a night and day experience. And with Uranus, there's surprises around every corner. There's chaos potentially, especially again if you have planets around these degrees, middle degrees, 20 degrees around fixed signs. Uranus has been very strong for you for years, and it's really strong with this eclipse. So, now this can bring a certain opportunity as well to us, but we may just feel like we need to like center ourselves, ground ourselves. If you do qigong, if you do like good Taurus grounding practices, earthing practices. So, a lot of times with Uranus transits, or eclipses, associated with Uranus, or Mercury with Uranus, we can be on the computer a lot, and it's important to get out and earth, literally put our feet into the earth and ground. Well, just lay down on the earth and take a nap, right? Or do some meditation on the earth or against a tree. That could be really helpful. I mean, we have a lot of planets in Taurus right now. It's the spring. It's always a good time to be out and get your hands into the soil. Maybe you're planting a garden. Great way to, counteract some of this like potentially chaotic energy and wild, uncertain energy that Uranus can bring in. But also be willing to, be malleable. And if you are doing something, on the day of the eclipse or like in the days around it, just expect that you'll have some pretty, exciting, interesting conversations, maybe a lot of downloads coming, very metaphysical, astrological, Uranus can rule everything related to that. The metaphysics and the higher mind, the multidimensional. Uranus has the ability to tap into all this, but also be expecting the unexpected, and that you might want to say yes to something that comes up last minute. Uranus is a very spontaneous planet, but remember that this is an extremely emotionally charged eclipse. So sudden changes could also bring some kinds of Uranian traumas, and then we have to work through those. And so let's kind of break that down, why that might be happening. Scorpio is a water sign, and it's ruled by Mars traditionally. And you look over here, and Mars is in Cancer. Well, that's another water sign. If you look over here, Saturn's in Pisces, another water sign. Neptune in Pisces. Now, Mars is coming to a trine with Neptune. Saturn is not part of a exact trine here, but a lot of water here. Now, the thing that we want to notice first is that, if you see this moon Mars, they're in each other's signs. Mars is in Cancer, the moon sign. Moon is in Scorpio, the Mars sign. But both planets are not happy in those signs typically, right? The moon is known in its exaltation in Taurus, so it's in its what we call its fall in Scorpio, And Mars is also in its fall in Cancer. It likes to be in Capricorn. It's exalted there. It can go achieve and be ambitious, but in Cancer, it has to do a lot of inner work and a lot of emotional work. So we've been doing this now for, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. It's been a while, but by the time of this eclipse, and a lot's been moving as you get to the between the solar and lunar eclipse, and then you see Mars going through this emotional. Cancer rules the stomach, right? So I would think that a lot of us have been going through some anxiety that we feel in our stomach. We could be emotionally eating that could peak around this this moon. We could be working a lot with our inner child, like just a desire to be held more, to be comforted. Like comfort foods, we have to be careful with how we're, ingesting during this time. Because water is very permeable, very susceptible and empathic to the environment. And so we want to stay around high vibration energies. We want to be willing to do the inner work, and but to be held in that, right? Like if we're going to do a ceremony, some shamanic work or breath work or anything like that, we want to make sure that there's a good container for us with this eclipse, that that we can integrate. Integration is a big word right now, and it's a big theme around, a lot of us doing work with psychedelics, and but not just psychedelics. Like anything that we're doing right now needs a lot of integration, because there is a lot of shift happening. And shift with an F, but the other one too. So just remember that this could also be very nostalgic types of energies. We may be longing, for the past, and some of us may be reconnecting with our families. I know I'm going to see my family for the first time since COVID happened. And so we're talking 3 years, and of course that brings up a lot, and so we want to be sensitive to that. We want to have, be able to like speak slower, be more intentional. But again, this is a kind of emotionally like eruptive potential eclipse going on here. So just, be sensitive to that, and know that there's, there's something that may really come up with this that we haven't dealt with like forever. It may be something like a past life. It may be a birth trauma that we realize. Cancer is a sign of birth. You've never studied your birth trauma, and this would be a time to do that. And it's a big part of rebirthing work. One of my favorite modalities of breath work. It reveals a lot of the core patterns that got seeded during our birth, even while we were in the womb. And of course, that forms a template for our whole life experience, relationships, career, patterns. So if you haven't done that, let's get in touch. We can look at your birth experience, but talk to your parents about this, and start to put the puzzle pieces together. Why certain patterns might be there. So this is part of this watery type of work, and this will be supported by Mars coming to trine Neptune for the days, like about 10 days after this. So, Mars can drive us in a flowing way into Neptune's domain of the psyche, of the archetypes, of dreams, of mysticism. So it could be a great time, again, to enhance your spiritual practices, study non-duality, practice, meditation. The Tibetan Buddhists talk about the eclipse window as being a very important time to be doing more meditation, more, there's this practice of metta, which is when you direct loving kindness, and sort of that you direct your practice to the benefit of all beings. It's kind of an extension of the bodhisattva vow, which is that, I sort of delay my own enlightenment or my own nirvana so that all beings may be liberated, right? And then I will dedicate my life and my work as seva, sacred service, right? And so we are looking at how are we doing that these days? How are we dedicating our work in more service, and not just like, what can I grab, right? And this is really important with this eclipse, and Mars going into Cancer, more assigned more sensitive to family and the needs of each other, how to nourish each other, right? So this is all happening with this eclipse, right? And remember that it's a south node eclipse. It's an eclipse with Scorpio, with the moon, but it's the south node is part of this, right? And so with the south node involved, south node is a decrease symbol. It's a letting go. It's a release symbol. So again, something is going to be released around this eclipse, whether that's the place that you live, a relationship, how you're spending your money. Something needs to be let go of. And there's also this, we said Mercury retrograde. Mercury will be coming out as the morning star around this time. So this is like the around the halfway point, a little over the halfway point. Something always kind of shifts in Mercury's journey at that time. We kind of get more of the storyline coming through. And so there's going to be this new energy coming. Mercury won't go direct until the 15th of May. Jupiter will then change signs to Taurus. You can see there's going to be a big shift around the middle of May. But what's happening is wherever Mercury is in the chart for you right now, we're going to get into those signs in a moment, you really need to do a lot of contemplative work, a lot of reflective work, integrative work. This is always true for Mercury retrograde, that we need to go within and reflect, especially on the last 3 months, what we've learned, who we've met, what we've discovered, but this has a lot to do with our values, what's important to us. And they've been shifting for a lot of us. And so when we come back to that idea of like, what are resources to me? What are assets? What are my values? And then what are mine and what do I share with others? Big question during this eclipse. And for Mercury, just making sure that I'm feeling like, that I am connected to the earth, that people, some of us may be stocking up on certain things or working on our homes during this time, or maybe we need to move home because it's not the right place for us and we want to get more grounded. If you have never done locational astrology, highly recommended if you are going to move out of your city. And this, does make me think that some of us will start to move. You got that Uranus energy moving us, changing us. We got, the 2 eclipses. We got Pluto involved recently, Mercury retrograde. So some things really come up about, is this the right place for me? Potentially Jupiter at the end of Aries. Like, do I need an adventure? Do I need to go on a trip, right? Where can I do that intentionally, even more strategically in my life? And that's where we can use locational astrology. That's my niche, my area I love to support clients in. So if you are, feeling this energy, put what's going on with you in the chat, what's been going on with the eclipses so far, Mercury retrograde so far. And remember that Mercury retrograde, that house for you is also where Jupiter is going to go and give you a bunch of potential opportunities, abundance, inspiration, growth over the next year. So this is why it's so important right now, wherever Mercury is, that you really study, you reflect, you integrate, you write about it. Also be aware, that there's communication challenges, tech challenges with Mercury retrograde. So of course, always double, triple check your documents, back up everything. If you have to get on the road, make sure you got your registration, all your things, your ducks in a row, so that you are, just expect some stress, expect some hassle. That's extra with the Mercury retrograde. And then, Mercury retrograde with the eclipse, with Uranus, there's some chaos in the air around this eclipse. And so just be sensitive to that's happening. And, be careful on the roads. If you're flying, of course, just know that there could be some delays, some changes suddenly, right? And, just be prepared for that and, enjoy and embrace that and know that it's happening for whatever reason it needs to, and don't fight that process. I think that's a big part of the Scorpio energy, right? Is what we resist persists, this. And so just remember that that is, important here. And one last thing about this eclipse, again, a relational point, before we kind of look at the particular signs, is that Venus is in a square with Neptune, and she'll be building that square, in the days before this eclipse. So probably by May 1st, we'll see this start to be really felt. And Venus square Neptune, Venus in Gemini is kind of a fun energy. There's a lot to learn with each other. We're curious, kind of like butterflies flitting about, But when the square to Neptune comes in, there's a tendency to have some higher ideals, some or sort of romantic projections on each other. There is a desire for a more like paradisical type of connection, more kind of cinematic, Hollywood-like experience, right? And we can experience some disappointment or disillusionment if that doesn't happen on the other side of this, right? So don't put anyone too high on the pedestal. Let yourself be put there. If you are doing that, like just call it out. Call it out and say, if you're dating someone, or there's this could be a time where you might want to create more of like a ritual with a partner that is a more spiritual type of way of connecting, right? Maybe you read or study some tantric material, neo-tantric material, and you have a beautiful experience. That'd be Venus and Gemini learning together, and then squaring Neptune, that you bring in. Neptune is asking you at that moment with the square to integrate the spiritual, to integrate the mythical. Maybe you study some of your archetypes, your Venus and Mars, your version of the god and goddess, and how do they want to be loving with each other, right? Or you read poetry to each other. That can be beautiful. Maybe erotic poetry could be a fun way to express this, right? So that's a great kind of Neptune. Or you go to a festival together, but then you have to be careful. Like, what are our boundaries? What are our agreements? So going into this, knowing that boundaries want to be dissolved, but hopefully in a healthy way, right, that you agree on. Then Venus will go into Cancer and we'll be in like very sensitive space in our hearts, and we'll want a lot of closeness, right, where Mars has been. So it's quite interesting that they're kind of back to back there. So just note that Venus-Neptune square. And I think we should look at the different signs now. So let's start with, let's go back here, and I'm just going to take you kind of through that's the days. Sorry about that. We're going to go kind of through the hours and each rising sign. And note here's Aries rising, that, of course, you're going to have certain planets and certain signs that will be affected. We're focusing on the rising sign because it's going to show us where the eclipse is landing, what house it's in, what area of life. And of course, if you have planets there, we've talked about those degrees. So let's break it down. Aries rising, that means the Scorpio is your 8th house. And so this eclipse will be landing in your 8th house, lots of energies in your 2nd house. It's going to emphasize really everything that we've been talking about with Scorpio, because Scorpio and the 8th house have affinity, right? They're not the same thing, but essentially the topics are the same. And so this is the area, like Aries, if you are, if you're in a marriage, this is your partner's resources. If you're in a business, this is your business partner's resources. That can be people they know. That can be, it's anywhere that you're joint or sharing, investments or resources. And this could also bring up like issues with like taxes, right? It's that time of the year for a lot of people. So, it's something that really could be coming up for you. You could have a lot of emotional energy around that. Could bring up issues around inheritance. Mortality may be close to you somehow. Maybe this is a time you're going through your own death rebirth experience. Maybe someone close to you is dying. And it's something that you really want to be putting more attention towards, your own relationship with death, right? And maybe you have a new relationship with it, right? And you're approaching it differently. I just watched an amazing special about music therapy and hospice. And as a musician, it really touched me. So there may be something very deep in the soul that needs to be excavated and worked through. There may be communities all around you. Pluto is part of, this axis coming in, that are, more transformational now, more shamanic, more ceremonial, deeper communities around you. So access them, don't be afraid to reach out for support, and also make sure that you're looking at how you're earning resources right now, and that you are getting clear about your values, with all this Mercury retrograde, second house stuff, and what's really truly important to you during this eclipse. It's a deep one, and so let's look at our next sign over, which would be Taurus, and Taurus rising. Taurus energies, of course, a lot's happening in your first house. It's sort of a coming out time of the year for you every year when the sun moves into Taurus, comes into your first house. But Mercury retrograde here is making, and this is quite interesting, Mercury is making you reflect on how you present yourself, your image, maybe your body, right? Maybe you need to do a little bit more exercise or work on that. There is, this is interesting, right? Because Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, fixed signs, they don't like to change as much. Then you have, massive eclipses the last year and a half happening in these houses for you. Pluto now coming to your area of career, right? And so we think that, this eclipse landing in your area of partnership, that there's something, there may be a relationship ending or changing, right? You may need a lot more freedom. I mean, Uranus is in your first house. That's been 4 years, but with the eclipse activating this, the sun here, you need some more independence, perhaps, more freedom. But there is definitely some big shifts going on relationally for you that also may have to do with your career, and you're probably wanting to have a bigger impact in the world at this time. And so just this also may be themes that have been brewing for the last 6 months. Again, last eclipses were in November, and then we had the eclipse before back in May of May 16th, basically May 15th of last year. Some of those themes and people might be coming back into your life. So, allow this sort of completion process to take place, and be sensitive to the changes going on in relationship for you with this eclipse. So let's look over at Gemini. And, Gemini, you could see that the Taurus house is really packed, which is the 12th house. And that means that the eclipse is happening over here in the 6th house. And so this is the area of, our daily duties, our daily seva, daily service. And so you might be looking at your work and just, maybe you have more work, not enough work, but you're looking at like my daily regimen. Am I like in a good rhythm, right? Now, this is the house of health and illness. So there can be some issues coming up around this eclipse. These could be themes that have been with you again through the previous eclipses, maybe just over the last year and a half, really strong. Maybe something even more chronic coming to an issue that you need to deal with. There is support, around you for this. You need to ask for it. You need to, make sure that you are daily taking care of yourself. Maybe, a different exercise regime as well. The 6th and 12th house eclipses are not necessarily like very fun, right? Like eclipses are always wild rides, right? But this one, because these two houses don't have a, like we would say like a healthy relationship with the first house, which has to do with the body and just general like enthusiastic embrace of life, right? And so mental health, spiritual health is more the 12th house. And you're needing to examine that with Mercury retrograde there. Your relationship to spirit, to other dimensions, to the dream world, past lives, maybe just your own past lives, like literally, in this one life, like, memories, childhood stuff, like there just could be a lot of layers of things that haven't been processed that need some downtime, right? And yeah, and then that like affects your work, right? Like, so maybe you need to do a lot of inner work, spiritual work. Maybe you need retreat. You know, Mercury retrograde's like, I'm taking a break. Like, I'm just not going to see clients, or I'm going to take a day off of work, or I'm just going to go be out in nature. And great, right? But just know that there's sort of this, there may be a little internal battle there of like, how much do I want to put out into the world, and do I have to take care of, and then how much do I need to like do that inner work, right? And you know, just be careful to not like undo yourself, the 12th house, with too many Taurian pleasures. Like it could be drink, it could be food, Netflix, like just kind of checking out in a little bit. But if you haven't been doing enough of that, right? Maybe you've been working too hard, then it's like time to do that, like time to chill, right? It's okay. Like watch an inspiring spiritual movie, perhaps, right? Or yeah, take an entire day out in nature, right? And go to a museum, see something beautiful, right? But yeah, be sensitive. Also, there's something with pets in this house where the eclipse is. So there could be some issue with pets, or maybe you start, you know, maybe you want to have a pet, something comes up around pets. So look at that for Gemini rising. Now, if you go over to Cancer rising, now we're looking at the 5th house. Now, this is really interesting, Cancers, because this is a you know, lunar eclipse in the 5th house, the moon being there, right? Scorpio, the nodes have been moving the 5th and the 11th house. Now, the moon rules Cancer. So this is the area of children. So we can expect that there will be a lot of energy moving around your children. Now, if you don't have children, or even if you do, this could be news of getting pregnant, or really wanting to have a child. But definitely there's some energy around children, and also your creative children. Self-expression is really emphasized here. So the arts, you know, the 5th house can be romantic, but you know, there's something that really feels like it needs to be expressed, and maybe with the support of your community, right? With all this Taurus energy, Mercury retrograde there. So we're looking at, who are my people? Who are my tribe? How am I serving them? Maybe you're playing more of a, you know, maternal or paternal role, Cancer rising. Mars in your 1st house. Maybe you're a lot more activated right now around your role as a caregiver, a nurturer, a provider, and that you're really seeing how that's playing a big function in your community, right? And so there is really a need to tune into your own, you know, inner child that wants to express itself, the children that you do have or might want to have, right? And you know, that you're much more lit up than normal. Like you're fired up, Mars in your 1st house. And you know, sometimes that could bring a little bit passive aggressive energies with a Cancer rising, because they're usually very soft, you know, but this Mars makes them kind of a little bit more like, right? You know, irritable or aggressive, or you know, combative or competitive, and you know, good. Maybe you need a little push right now, right? But just be sensitive to that, and that this is yeah, this is a real time to look at that playful energy and in how it wants to be expressed in your life. So let's look at Leo rising, and we can imagine Leos that, again, fixed sign, right? But this is probably bringing up themes of home for you. Now, this could be you know, the 4th house is here where the eclipse is landing. Likely you're going through some big shifts around possibly, you know, career, relationship, and home. It's like everything all at once. Like the movie, everything everywhere all at once. Yeah, for sure, it could be happening, because yeah, the eclipse is hitting you know, the area of the home. We tend to move during that time, or within 6 months. Maybe we have just moved, and so you're working with that. Could be a relationship shift, going on. I call them relationships, right? With Pluto now coming into your seventh house of partnership. Mercury retrograde in the area of career, right? Is this the work I should be doing? Does it feel solid, stable? Is it part of my value system? Yeah. You may be needing like more embodiment in your career if you're not doing that. Obviously you're a leader, Leo rising, and you're sitting with that, like, what does that leadership mean? I mean, this is always for you, Leo, with the sun in the 10th house of career. This is a big career time of the year for you. So something is really up that, wants to be activated, shifted around career and around home. And maybe there's just a push and pull for you around like home responsibilities, career responsibilities. It becomes really important that you're using your energy wisely with this eclipse, that you're not, burning yourself out, burning the candle, what do they say, at both ends or something like that. And, there is some kind of, Mars has been in your 12th house. There's some kind of like hidden energies too that may be compelling you, something from the unconscious too that's going on. Saturn's in your 8th house. I'd say it's really important to also be doing some deep work at this time, even though it seems like a lot of externals are changing, like possibly relationship, home, career, right? These are very obvious. It seems to have to do with what's going on in the unconscious, your relationship to spirit, to your soul, to your personal psychology, maybe some unprocessed material. So if you haven't been putting some energy there, definitely be inviting that in with this eclipse, and be gentle with yourself, because I imagine a lot is going on for you with this eclipse. And so just allow yourself to feel that, right? And to know that it's all for the best. And you're going to feel a lot more energy come in once Mars goes into Leo. You're going to feel like you're going to turn around a corner, pivot. And this will happen by the time we look at like Jupiter moving into Taurus mid-May. So hold out, right? Like 10, 12 days after this, it'll start to shift for you. So Virgo, we're looking at the moon, the solar eclipse in your 3rd house. And so there's something shifting, and maybe a limiting belief or a thought that keeps coming up for you, a certain way of thinking. Maybe you've even been tuning into information. I mean, Virgo is always sensitive to the information it puts into its body, in its mind, and its soul. And I say body very intentionally because, the Virgo is a sign of things like yoga and, herbalism. And so maybe this is something that you've been learning about how to be healthy, that wants to come up. Pluto's just moved into your 6th house of health. This will be an important theme for you for the next 20 years. It always is, though, Virgo rising. And so I think with the 3rd house, an area that's related to how we think, what we think about, also short trips, workshopping, trainings. You might be compelled to, go deeper with some of those at this time, be doing a little bit more of that work. But it needs to serve a more spiritual purpose. It needs to like inspire you, enlighten you in some way, or help you inspire and enlighten others, because Mercury retrograde in your 9th house, higher education, right? Philosophical teachings, the quest for truth. This could also make you a little bit restless. I mean, your mutable energy, and here we have, these parts of the chart that are mutable being hit by the eclipse. So this could also be a lot of change going on, travels, shifts, but likely for some kinds of learning experiences. This could also bring up issues around brothers, sisters. The 3rd house relates to that. But communication becomes a theme. So maybe this is a time too where you're looking at, do I need to be blogging more or vlogging or getting online and talking to people? So this is, ways that your communication, there's something maybe that needs to shift there. Maybe it hasn't landed with people. What needs to change there with this lunar eclipse? Virgo. And when we look at Libra, we're looking at the second house. So now we're on the other side, right? Aries was 8th house, second house. Now we're second house, 8th house here. And so we're thinking a lot of the same things about resources coming up, that there may be some financial loss with this from some of your own side. Maybe you aren't earning as much, or you're just like getting clear that something needs to shift around your values. And, maybe there's some movement forward around, I mean, this could be a big theme when Jupiter goes into Taurus, around, your partner's resources, or someone you're connected with, that you're collaborating with, that there's where some growth is. But what maybe needs to be released a little bit is more around that second house for you, your values. They need to change a bit. And maybe you've been stuck there. Or maybe you've been spending too much, right? Or spending in a way that is not really aligned with where you're growing and going in your life, right? What you're growing into, what's important to you. Mars is up there in your 10th house of career. So again, there's been a lot of movement for you the last month and a half with this. And I wonder, has this promoted you in some way? Are you in a leadership role? How is that changing your values or your monetary flow? This is something to be considering. And again, is this something about assets and like what you want to own, what you own? Does what you own you? These are some possibilities for Libra rising. And then, of course, Scorpio, right? In your first house. I mean, this is, when a lunar eclipse lands in our first house, it's a time where we can feel it so intensely, right? And there is some big shift to our outer energies, how we present ourselves, the masks that we put up to the world. Not that a mask is wrong. We all have a rising sign. It's all the way that we, place our image out there. And with Scorpio, it's like, okay, well, you have an impact in the world. And you know that you're going to have a big influence in the world. But this is like, really tuning into the relationships in your life and what they're reflecting about your impact and your influence. Like, do you need to adjust a message that you have or a way that you come off? Are you being too, what we might call Scorpionic, maybe too intense, maybe a little paranoid, right? Or are there some self-destructive behaviors that you just really have to acknowledge at this time? Maybe someone reflects that to you, like a partner or a collaborator or a colleague in your life. This is all 7th house energy that you need to pay attention to, right? And there's a lot of relationship growth for you around the corner here, or even right now. But there could be an ending of a relationship, and there could be new relationships blossoming, all simultaneously. Could also be likely that something is shifting in the home space. See, all these fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, these eclipses are happening, in the angular houses. So the tendency then is that like all the major areas of our life change. And we consider that like how I appear, my ascendant, my relationships, my career, my home. So this is all going to be true for you, Scorpio rising. This is a big one. And be gentle with yourself. Make sure you get that support from loved ones around you, and be giving yourself some loving care, and be patient around this. This is an important eclipse, and there is support for you. You just have to ask for it. Sometimes that's hard with the Scorpio. So Sagittarius. Now, this is sort of that reverse of Gemini we were talking about earlier, Sag. And so the eclipse is in your 12th house. And it brings up that there is something going on, again, 12th house is very mystical. very, very intangible. But this might connect you to maybe something from, your own mental health that needs to be dealt with, some kinds of anxieties that you might be having. This may also be important for you to take a retreat as well, to not push yourself too hard. Sagittarius doesn't like any limits. So this could be a time, again, and Mars has been in your 8th house and is at this time, that this is, a time for you to go into more watery depths, into more, into the soul and its journey. And so, you could be doing some good dream work during this eclipse. Good time for you to be meditating. And you may feel like compelled to volunteer as well. Give yourself away a little bit more, working in hospice or hospitals, or volunteering for prisons. The 12th house has to do with prisons and jails. And, there's some incredible things I've been learning about, things like music therapy in prisons, or art therapy, or prison writing programs. There could be things like that, or you want to volunteer in a hospice situation. Again, your 6th house is being very activated, which is a house of service too. So 6th, 12th, the ego gets sort of deflated in these houses, and we think about serving others. And that's been really up over the last year and a half for you. And so I would look back and see how these themes could be, present if we weave you back to November, if we weave you back to May 15, 16, that time of year last year, right? There's something similar going on now. So Sagittarius, paying attention to your health right now with Mercury retrograde there, very important, and maybe slowing it down a little bit. Capricorn. So this is, a reflection on your community, right? And who you're a part of, the tribe, who's sharing the same goals and causes as you. Maybe this is shifting for you, right? That you started to circulate around some different people. You maybe realize, like, it could be something professional too, like maybe you feel like a job shift might be coming, or that you want to be around people who are more resonant with you, similar to you. They kind of get you, right? And they also invite you to share your creative energy more, your self-expression, which you're really tuned into at this time. Mercury is retrograde in your 5th house of creativity. The sun is there. As we said before, the 5th house has to do with children. So this eclipse might bring up something to do with your children. But we do think that those you affiliate with become really important with this eclipse, that there is, a question around my tribe and who I'm associated with. Maybe there's certain groups that you either want to, get rid of or be released from, right? And other groups that you may want to join. So just kind of really tune into, like, how you are constellated around these larger communities and what you're offering them and what they're offering you. And is that feeling balanced during this eclipse? Is that feeling like it's an alignment for where you're going, right? So this is, and then, just note that Mars has been in your 7th house and will be, during this eclipse. That, that's a very difficult transit often for relationships. We can have more confrontation, conflict, some anger come up, some reactivity, right? And just be careful, because during this eclipse could be a peak moment of that. Know that if you could be more physical with a partner, obviously more sex can be great with that. More aerobic types of energies like hiking, working out together. That can be a great way to channel that. If you are not in a relationship, Mars could be motivating you to get out there and date more. Capricorn rising can be sometimes a conservative sign, but but this cycle may make you a lot more active around that. And we think that, does this have to do with being around people who are part of your tribe, and then maybe you find a beloved there, right? Or there's some kind of connection there between what's happening with Mars in your area of partnerships. But just be careful with not being too aggressive with people at this time, and burning any bridges. And then Aquarius, again, the fixed sign, the last fixed sign here we're talking about, and there's definitely some shift going on around career for you. And it might have to do with like some similar themes we just talked about, like these people are not my people. They're not the people I want to work with every day or give my energy to, or where I might feel drained at the end of the day. I might feel like I'm not really supported. So ask yourself these questions. Now, if it is working out for you, great. Just be sensitive that Mars is in your 6th house. You just might have a lot more responsibility then. But probably you're going through some big shifts in the workplace, and you're wanting to have more of a sphere of influence and impact and power, because Pluto's now starting to come into your 1st house, right? He's going to be there in the next 20 years pretty much. So, you're not going to, Aquarius sometimes we can be one of many, but with Pluto crossing this, ascendant, and with this eclipse, some pivot is happening. Something that may have been lurking in the career space or with colleagues, now it's like, I can't deal with this anymore, right? And I need to shift something, or it's going to shift. And I want to have a more important role to play. Now, because the 4th house is being really activated, Mercury retrograde there, there is a potential that this again can be the whole move. I have to move. It affects my career, or I move for the career particularly. We could definitely see that happening. We could also see that there's just a lot of energy around family as well, and that there's a tension between family and career, maybe even a family of origin that you come from. So there's energies going on there that you are really tuning into, Aquarius. And lastly, we move into Pisces. And with Pisces, you've been feeling a lot, Pisces. You always do, Pisces rising. With Saturn having just gone into your 1st house, there's been a lot of deeper work you're starting to do, being in more integrity, a lot of responsibility. And that, when you look at this eclipse, it's in your 9th house. So there's a question around where your faith is at. Have you been shifting around what you believe? Maybe you've been studying some new spiritual material or religious material, or starting some different kind of practices, spiritual practices. It could be yoga, meditation, lots of different things. Maybe this is also bringing you to a point of like, travel, either like, I got to stop doing it, or I want to do it, right? The 9th and 3rd houses, always bring these themes up for us. And so we're looking at like, what doesn't really inspire me, bring enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm means to be infused by the divine. And so, do I feel that, or do I feel flat? And how are my thoughts affecting my relationship to my source, to creator? However I communicate with that and know that as part of who I am, ultimately who I am. These are bigger questions, right? And just be aware that you might need some support from teachers, or certain trainings, certain workshops and things that like really inspire you, and you're around people that are doing some really, really healthy, good work, right? But definitely letting go of old belief, old patterns there, and there may be some new skill sets you're developing as you let go of certain beliefs. It's interesting, right? Because the third house, where Mercury's retrograde, we're kind of learning a lot there, and so certain skills may be coming up for you that that are really important for you at this time and over the next year, probably. So Jupiter will be in that third house. So there'll be a lot of ideas that will grow you. But there's something that needs to be let go of in terms of maybe a dogma or some kind of, systematic way that you've kind of approached the world that needs to be kind of gently sort of released to the winds, released to the sea, Pisces. So beautiful, beautiful. So we've journeyed through all of the signs. It's going to be a very strong eclipse. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be a letting go. And we just need to know that there is, as we come to the end of May, there's a lot of new energies birthing. And it really is like, yeah, it's a birthing process, right? Like we're kind of ending one world, a new world is coming forth. This is collectively, this is personally, this is, relationally, this is professionally for a lot of us right now. And so moving through this with grace, and making sure to get on the earth, like get outside with this season, with the Taurus energies, really, really important with this this amount of change for a lot of us. I want to invite you, if you want to do an eclipse reading, definitely get in touch with me. I have all my links below. I have a special for Taurus energies because it's Taurus time of year. I'm a Taurus, so much love to you, Taurus, Taurus risings, Taurus moons, Taurus suns. I would love to play a song for you as a Taurus, and I'll put the links to my music below, hoping the mic situation will be good. So I'm just going to try to stop the video here, change the audio real quick. Sorry, stop the share. Let me change the audio, and hopefully you can stay on and enjoy the song. I do have a new ambient album coming out in May for my birthday, and I will be changing the. This is a guitar song for you, and hope you enjoy it. And definitely tune in for some other videos on Jupiter Taurus coming up, and the May astrology, and lots more. So this is a song called Duende, and it's off of Metanoia, which was my last guitar album on celestial.com, celestial.com. Duende, it has to do with passion. It's a term that the great Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca spoke of, and sort of in a relationship to flamenco, but the energy of enthusiastic, vital, and life force, right? Very Scorpionic. So I wanted to share that track with you. So check it out, Metanoia. It's the guitar album on celesteowl.com. All the best blessings to you this eclipse season. This is VerDarLuz. Namaste.